Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro, and it's time for an spoiler analysis of Beau is Afraid. We've seen the movie twice now, and we feel that we are now equipped to dive in, discuss, the meaning, all those fun things.
Before we go into the analysis, I want to give my briefing on my second viewing. Did I like it more? Did I like it less? Well, I actually liked it a little bit less. I can see where people are coming from when they say that they find the movie tedious and a little overlong. I kind of get it. I was feeling that a little bit on the second viewing. It does make sense to be frustrated with Beau's inability to really do much else except for give in to the impulses of his mind, which are, as we're going to talk about, shaped by his mother. I also don't necessarily think that those who don't like the movie don't understand the movie. But, we are going to explain why we think it's overall a really good movie.
By the way, heavy spoilers, I don't want you to watch this video if you haven't seen the movie. I don't want you to have it spoiled for you. I kind of want to start out generally by just saying what I think the thesis of the movie really is, which is that it's about a man-child who cannot overcome the overbearing influence of his mother.
Formulated into a thesis, it would almost be that parents have such profound influences on our psyches that they completely shape the world that we live in.
And that's true about all mothers, that mothers feed us, they clothe us, they give us medicine,
they teach us what is safe and what is not safe.
They equip us for the world emotionally, and in Beau's case, it's just a mother who didn't equip him well for any of that and tightly controlled every aspect of his life so that she was the only source of love and warmth that he could possibly get. And so Beau is left feeling afraid of everything else.
Well, she doesn't even have to physically control anything. She's just on autopilot. She's just so severely damaged his mind and shaped his perceptions of everything that her presence is absolutely everywhere. And that's why we're in a place during the entire film where we don't even know what reality is, because it's so heavily subjective. This is purely a journey inside of Beau's mind and psychology. From the antagonist perspective, the mother, who's not just a mother, but an omnipresence, her goal is to have Beau just love her and only her. If he dares to love or cast affection in any other direction, he is punished severely.
Basically cast out in the cold. If he seeks his father figure whatsoever, in his nightmare, he gets shoved in the attic and completely forgotten about.
Either he loves her and accepts that she is the only source of light in his life, and she's the only thing that can absolutely comfort him and keep him safe, or he's subject to painful abandonment.
When Beau goes to his mother's house towards the end of the movie, we see that Mona Wasserman controls all these different businesses and corporations. These are everything from the frozen food that Beau eats to the medicine that he takes. The house that he lives in is one of her real estate ventures. And if you pause at certain points in the movie, and even in the trailer, you'll see that Beau's microwave has the Mona Wasserman logo on it. A lot of stuff has this logo on it because, kind of like I was saying earlier, a mother clothes and feeds and shapes the world around her son, and that's just the movie's way of showing how she is literally everything in his life to this day. There's also an object in Mona's house that says, "Your security is our business," for 40 years, and that's Beau's age. She's basically built this cage for him that he is stuck in. He's in a Truman Show that is just the influence of his mother that he cannot escape. And the end is actually quite similar to the Truman Show. He kind of takes a boat, and it seems like he's finally found his freedom, and then he is once again trapped in this giant dome that he can't get out of. So now I think we should go chronologically through the movie and talk about some of the details and meaning of certain scenes and symbols. The opening scene, which is him being born, I think is just showing how the second that Beau leaves his mother's womb, he is immediately subjected to a terrifying world, and the only safe place is within the womb of his mother. Oh, interesting, actually, that I just thought. That sound of the snipping of the scissors as he comes out of his mother's womb, that's kind of breaking this chain between him and her. And there is a recurring image of a chain in the movie, Beau trying to break free of this chain, and also when the chandelier falls onto her head, there is a shot of where the chandelier was, and it's a broken chain. I don't know if you want to call the umbilical cord a chain, I think that's maybe fair.
I mean, giving birth, right? It's mother womb is safe and then outside world is terrible. He also hits his head, he just falls on the floor apparently, and she's like, "Is he okay? He hit his head, he's not crying," and then they have to spank him in order to get him to cry. Just being thrust out of the womb in such a screeching and horrible fashion.
The next scene is him talking to his therapist. Clearly he has a lot to work through with his mother. There's an interesting detail where his therapist writes guilty on the notepad, which is when you're watching it for the first time, you think the therapist is noting that Beau is feeling guilty, But during the second time, it's as if the therapist is accusing Beau of being guilty. At the end of the movie, the therapist comes out and he's like in cahoots with the mother, recording all of his therapy sessions because Beau has this irrational feeling that his mother is omnipresent, like a god. In the same way that you think that God knows your thoughts or will catch you sinning, Beau thinks that his mother is going to catch him having impure thoughts about her and wanting to break free or reject her loves. In the end of the movie, Beau is kind of put on trial for whether or not he is guilty of being disloyal to his mother. And there are a lot of examples, this being one of them, where Beau feels that he's just being surveilled by her.
And by the way, in the end, like the mother almost gives a literal explanation for the things that have been happening, as though she has like staged the entire world. Everything that you've seen is just her orchestration, and it's all been a test of whether he's guilty or not. And they even play back like a video clip from when he's staying in the house with the couple, with the little family, and they play that clip as though like in that moment Mona was doing it all as a test. The mother of that home seems to be aware that the test is happening, and she's trying to give him hints to let him stop incriminating himself.
Don't incriminate yourself on the napkin.
Yeah, so that's really like where it becomes more of a Truman Show thing. I think the film does want us to accept in a way that everybody is truly in on this world. Like he is in a Truman Show.
I feel like Beau kind of going home and exploring the world that he lives in, which is like clearly anxiety ridden, and everything that can go wrong does go wrong because that's just how his anxiety works. I don't think that there's that many details in there that need to be explained. I feel like that's kind of the obvious
Yeah, I
part
feel like
of the
that's
movie.
the part also that people really enjoy. Because they're like, okay, this is just inside of someone's head. This is like basically agoraphobic and afraid of everything. And this is what that experience is like for him.
I guess we can just kind of jump back to the house that Beau is stuck at with the family who is grieving their son who died in war. The family's obsessive grief over this kid and this desperate framing that he is like a hero and he died a hero. Even when the backstory of that becomes kind of questionable, that crazy guy that they're keeping, like there's hints that he might have actually just like killed him because he was crazy.
That is what happened, I think.
Yeah.
The guy who they're keeping in the trailer was in their son's troop and killed like everybody else and just shot everybody. And then there's this fucked up realization that like they're just keeping the man who murdered their son, they're calling him a hero, and they're calling their son a hero. This sort of feels like an isolated point from the movie, but I think the obvious read here is that America just desperately wants to look at like Iraq and just say that we were heroes in it, but we were sort of the cause of all the deaths. Like we sent our people in there to die. We're just desperate to give it some sort of meaning.
I don't know if maybe that's parallel to how Beau is nurtured to have his own beliefs that are just comforting to him, and it's hard to break outside of those beliefs. Like the country that you live in can kind of raise you to believe certain things about it in the same way that a mother can nurture you.
I actually do think that's it, because I think if the movie's about Beau trying to escape his mother's grip on his world, he could potentially find refuge in this place, right? Like they're willing to keep him as a son. They're willing to just keep him forever. And it's sort of like a test of whether he could just stay with them and like find a new mother.
Oh, yeah.
But this new mother, I guess, is like the United States, or it's just the suburban dream of the United States. It's about how this sort of like fantasy is a false one that can also deceive you. I feel like I did have to articulate that and really like flesh it out for it to make sense for me. But now that I've said it, I really do think that's what it's trying to do. Yeah, especially the dad. Like people immediately laughed at his presence and just his smirk,
because he's just like such a dad.
He's such an American dad.
But the burden of this family is really put on their daughter. She's basically the victim of the weight of this grief.
Yeah, she seems sort of neglected because they just allow her to like take pills all day, right?
There's a lot about
They just heavily
pills.
medicate her.
She fucking pops pills all the time, and it was really funny to me on a second viewing. I didn't even notice how many pills she took.
Oh yeah, I know. It was funny that I was like, how did I not notice that she is constantly just crunching on them like they're candy?
And the dad's also a doctor.
Well, they all take medicine. They take medicine before they eat food. I think that's a component of the United States, the grip that Big Pharma might have, right? Like if Mona Wasserman is a CEO and that's part of her control, that is like a huge way you could have control, right? Is like by marketing and like selling products to you. So maybe that's a way in which there's a grip on the culture from big pharma companies, I guess.
Yeah, or
I
like,
think it might be going for that.
Everybody being like doped up on medication is almost like keeping them.
It's like their copium.
It almost has this like conspiratorial reading where it's like, oh, the US is overdiagnosing everybody so they can get everybody to be taking these pills, and so you can just submit and not question. Like it almost like bleeds into that conspiracy territory that I don't like, but I don't know if it's just me fear.
But I guess there's just this absurd, like, oh, of course you take the pills because they're just a part of our lifestyles.
Yeah. I also think it's really funny when Beau is coming to after his nightmare sequence and the veteran's like chasing him and he's like stabbing him with like several needles and he's like, it's okay, Beau, no need to get up. He loves you. He's not gonna hurt you. He loves you.
Them being just completely delusional. He's this savage, fucking crazy maniac. It seems like he's damaged from the war. Like, the war itself just gave... I mean, he has PTSD, right?
No, but he's like Beau in a sense, where he's still, like, living in the war in the same way that Beau is still, like, living in his childhood.
That's true. He's so steeped in his own delusions that he is a lot like Beau, isn't he?
So the daughter's death, the pink and blue paint, some clear color symbolism going on there. The daughter's room is the pinkest thing you've ever seen. And I think Beau is also represented with this same kind of baby blue color, because he wears these baby blue striped pajamas, kind of like him being a mama's boy. But the daughter drinking the blue paint to death, I think, is just the movie showing how she is just drowning in her parents' grief. In the same way that Beau drowns at the end of the movie in this cage that his mother built for him, she is also kind of the victim of this oppressive force of her parents.
The parents and the way that they treat their son after their son is passed away is how Beau is supposed to treat his mother after his mother's passed away. They absolutely worship him, and all they do is just live to worship. And maybe that's also where the American parallel comes in, you know, just worshiping country that we kind of know has these sins about it and we just continue to honor. I don't know. I don't feel like it is specific enough to give like a true critique of the United States, if that's what it's trying to do.
I also think there's a religious interpretation of it, because Mona Wasserman is like a god to Beau, and the way that she can like hear his thoughts and the way that she's like, you can't masturbate or that's sinful. It seems like it's kind of paralleling religious paranoia where people think that like there's a god watching them at all times. I don't know if it's commenting on religion or if it's just kind of using that to inform our understanding of Beau's relationship to his mother and being like, that's his God. There's also the little figurine that he holds in his hand, which is like the Virgin Mary and Jesus, which is a statue outside of Mona Wasserman's home and also something that he carries with him at all times. He gives it up to that lady. That's actually an important decision of him almost overcoming his mother in a sense, which is one of the very few times he tries to do that.
I don't know exactly why they invoke the Virgin Mary and Jesus. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
It's another one of those things where like, I don't really know what it's doing.
Yeah, you figure it out. But yeah, then he goes to the woods. This is probably a more agreeable part of the movie that people seem to really enjoy, like this animated sequence. And this is a really important part of the movie because it kind of shows the ideal world that like Beau envisions in his head for like what he could have if he were to be able to break free of these chains. I think it's important that in this animated sequence he is living off of the land, he is building his own things, like he's really forming an identity of his own, whereas in the world that Beau currently lives in, everything is under the influence of his mother. I think that's also why it's important that this sequence is animated. It's so far removed from reality. So it's kind of just Beau's dream of independence. And also there's some really beautiful lines in here about like finding a village and recognizing it as being this part of you that you didn't even know that you had. Like I think Beau is just deeply disconnected from who he might really be, like if he could free himself from his mother's influence.
I think it was really important to have this sequence in the film and just note that like there could have been a possibility for Beau. Like maybe there is a scenario where he could procreate and he could figure out the lies that his mother told him about his father.
Yeah, him being held back from being able to come is like him being held back from being able to start a family, and like that's kind of a key to becoming his own person too, and also growing up. Like old Beau in this fantasy, who also is just this guy sitting up on like a tower who presides over this like entire theater troupe. That's kind of like if Beau grew up, he would be this person, and we know that Beau is not grown up, he's still a child.
I wasn't sure why in the animated sequence he gained this idyllic and pastoral lifestyle and then had it taken away from him and then had to go on this journey where he was just searching, and then he had to confess, and then he could finally find his family again. I wasn't really sure why it went through all of those beats. Like, I don't know why he had to lose them. I don't know why he had to confess, because the confession is definitely something that is made clear what that means in the end, is like confessing to your guilt.
Well, in this movie, he confesses to being a coward.
Like, he confesses to being a coward?
In the animated sequence, he confesses to being a coward.
Does he? Because he was searching for his family. I don't know what's cowardice about that.
Well, I don't know about that specifically, but I do think that Beau's fault is that he is too much of a coward to be able to overcome and stand up to his mother,
confess to being being a coward?
I'm pretty sure that happened. And it's also said in this sequence that Beau's at fault for not being able to like recognize other people's love and like let that in. There was like something about that. But yeah, I kind of agree. I don't really know what it means that everything gets swept away and then he has to like go on a journey to find it again.
I feel like they were trying to parallel beats from the film's influences like The Odyssey. But then again, like he gets it sort of taken away from him. He's unable to break the chain. And because we sort of go on this like mogul so many times of him potentially finding something to break away from and then ultimately succumbing to some external force that happens to him, which is, you know, maybe his mind as well. That's where I think like it is a little tedious. Like even in analyzing the movie, we revisit the same idea over and over again in every single situation. So I think it's fair to like bring in that critique.
What about Elaine, the girl who tells him to wait for him on the boat in this like dramatic fashion?
Okay, so this is actually something I feel like worked really well for me both times. This illustration of this event in his past, because Elaine is the one thing that he thought, maybe I could love this. Maybe this is the person who's waiting for me and that I'm ultimately supposed to be with. And it connects really deeply and personally with something that happened in Beau's past, where mentally, even with the photo in his nightstand, I think he uses that to escape into a fantasy of maybe possibly being able to love someone else and being able to fall in love and be with a person. And on his cruise ship, his mother is like coaxing him into telling her about his crush and asking him, you know, to feel free to like tell me about why you think she's attractive and oh, you're attracted to her, and like really just prodding him about it. What she's trying to do is like get that out of him so that he feels guilty about loving anybody else and looking at anyone else. I really did read her as being like deceptive, because when she says, wait for me, Beau, she's like really upset about it. She's just livid with him and she's like, who is this? What is going on, Beau? How could you be doing this? How could you do this? Who is this? And so it's like this ultimate betrayal that he could have made. And in the end, we see it come to fruition because he comes into this lady and his mother says like, see, you love this person more than me. Like, you fucked this person in my bed. That just shows that you're willing to give everything to her but nothing to me. You don't give a shit about me. And that was the conflict on the boat.
Elaine is also, like, I guess everybody else in the movie, an employee of Beau's mother, like kind of working for her.
Only in the end. Only in the end. But in the cruise ship, she's not.
Yeah.
She's actually someone he could fall in love with. Like, he sneaks out of his mother's room in order to go see her. So it's this like one act of rebellion that gets him like thinking about something else, and maybe there's a world where he could escape. And also something that's illustrated well in this flashback sequence, but also sort of subtly, is his sexual attraction for his mother. There seems to be like, by them sharing this bed and her like speaking to him in the way that she does, I think there's definitely an undercurrent of sexuality where almost because she doesn't want him to love anybody else, she provides that sexuality and that sexual gratification for him. I don't think it suggests like anything happened, but I feel like the way she talks to him isn't just motherly. It's almost like the way, you know, a significant other would be in bed with you and sort of be talking to you. She does provide some semblance of sexuality for him.
Also, Elaine on the cruise ship seems to be kind of the opposite of Beau in her fearlessness. She's like, there's a dead body in the pool, everybody. And she's like very forward about like wanting to kiss him. She doesn't seem to have any fear. She argues with her mom and she calls her a bitch and stuff.
Yeah.
I also think the cruise, you know, like the boat at the end of the movie in this sort of Truman Show, like I'm finally getting to escape way, you know, that's also the cruise, is like Elaine is almost his path to escape. When he comes in her, he realizes that his mother was only lying to him about that because it would get him to avoid intimacy with anybody else and starting a family and growing up. It also makes him associate sex and coming with his mother, which is very fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. He can only think about his mom and how scared he is. Even though that is very overbearing and maybe heavy-handed for some people, I feel like that really worked for Mona's motivation. Like, if she is truly the monster that we need to believe her to be, drilling that into his mind illustrates just how far she'll go to keep Beau on a chain. And I like that it has to do with his sexuality, like the most intimate sort of part of yourself that he's unable to explore.
Now we should talk about the attic and what's in the attic. Something that wasn't clear to me and seemed to be unclear to other people was in Beau's flashback, it's actually said in the movie, if you are paying enough attention, that Beau is watching another version of himself get taken up to the attic for asking about his father. I remember coming out of the movie, we were kind of like, was that his brother? And I've seen other people be kind of confused
Yeah.
about what his brother. It's him, and then when he gets into the attic and he looks at that man in the corner, that's also Joaquin Phoenix. Not
Yeah,
just malnourished. Like the version of him that got abandoned.
Yes.
And that's what the attic represents. It's like this total abandonment. It's also where his father is, and his father is a penis.
Yeah.
This is a part that I'm like not quite sure how to really articulate or put together in a way
Yeah.
that makes total sense for
Yeah,
me.
I feel like this part wanted to be like crazy and wild. I don't exactly know what is going on here. Like, I feel like it did deflate some of the meaning you could have mined from that. If you're gonna explore his father, it's just this fucking monster penis. I don't really know what to do with that.
I guess this lack of a father is also just this disconnection with Beau and his own relationship to his masculinity and his sexuality.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if the penis is a father because that's all we know about him is that he was a penis that injected sperm into his mom,
Yeah.
then like his mother makes his father out to be some monster, sure, and then it's a monster penis. Like maybe there's not really a complicated way to look at it. Maybe it's just trying to be simple.
Yeah, I don't
and so
know.
it was like just going for a gag, like an easy gag or something. By the way, when he comes out of the attic, she first comforts him. Very important.
Yeah,
Goes,
yeah,
sweetie,
yeah.
sweetie, oh my god,
Yeah.
oh my god, and then she starts berating him once he like comes back to her and once he like hugs her leg. She comforts him when he needs it, and then immediately when he feels comforted, she just turns around and becomes a monster for him.
And then he kills her in an act of really standing up for himself. He's trying to break free again.
But he's almost overtaken by an impulse of hatred. If you can see, he just becomes a zombie, and then he goes, "Oh my god, what did I just do?" He doesn't
because
even know
he does
he's doing
because
it.
he does have hatred for her, and he does wish she was dead. Like,
And also, he doesn't even kill her. He chokes her for a little bit, and then he stops, and then she does this dramatic faint, and then that's where like the trial subsequently
no,
happens.
I think he killed her. Yeah.
I don't know though, because I feel like her being so over dramatic about it was like, you didn't really kill me, but you've just proven that you are just guilty. Like you are so bad.
I think
you
that
are so bad.
I think he killed her, and the end is just that he can't escape the guilt. Like no matter if she's alive or
I don't
dead.
think it's that he killed her. She already proved that when she faked her own death. That she's never dead.
Yeah.
So
like,
it's not even really a
she's-
question, is she dead? I think that the point of that was Beau just sealed his fate with her. You killed your own mother, even though she's not dead. Like she's there saying it to him, and he's like, "Oh my god, I killed my mother."
But I think it's just this sense of like we don't know if she's really dead or not the whole movie. Because it doesn't matter. It's really about what lives in the wake of his mind anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And then in the end, when he goes through the tunnel, I think that's also another reflection of how sex is like this escape from his mother. He's going through like a vagina.
I think
so.
that cave is his mother's, like, is his mother.
No, because he like comes out on the other side, and then it seems like we're gonna get a
It's
happy
this
ending.
he takes a boat ride into like a horrible, like menacing looking cave, and I feel like that represents his mother. I'm willing to say that there's like a couple ways to read that, but I definitely think that the cave represents like being inside of his mother's, the belly of the beast.
I don't know. I thought it was like a vagina.
Well, it didn't look very nice, did it? It looked more menacing.
No, they were playing like music where it was like.
It was
Beau's
definitely a
escaping, like-
vagina. I just think it's his mom's.
The end of him in the stadium, we already kind of talked about, like, this is the trial. I think it's funny that his lawyer, like, doesn't have the microphone that the defense has on his mother's side, which just shows how Beau kind of fighting back against the prosecutor is just so weak.
Well,
Like,
that's
he has
just
the
obvious,
weakest. I know
isn't
it's obvious.
This part, though, it doesn't even need explanation. Like,
Little
there's a
ultimate-
trial of his
Yeah.
guilt. We revisit parts of the film where his guilt is tested. Throughout this entire journey, he's just had failure after failure, where he gives the little figurine to that woman at the play, and then he refuses to take a car ride from the people's house to the funeral, and he's absolutely overcome with guilt. And he just cannot escape it. The ultimate chapter of his journey is just inevitably succumbing to his guilt.
And then there's drowning. I think that it's also worth wondering what water might symbolize, because there is that scene in the beginning where he's like desperate to drink water to swallow this pill, and then there's like him
Yeah.
taking a warm bath. But I think water seems to symbolize quite a lot of things, and maybe too many things for me to
Yeah,
really
it's
say.
a little too
And then
much
there's the
for me to be
cruise ship, the
precise
boats,
about it.
You know, water can represent the way for Beau to escape on the boat.
Well,
but it's
boats are
also something
definitely
that he-
freedom. Boats are definitely,
but it's
like,
also
the
something that he
ability to
like
escape.
drowns in. I guess the last piece is that the audience is this mirror reflection of a movie theater with this
Right.
projector and people eating popcorn and people exiting the theater as the credits go up, just as they would in the IMAX
Yeah, so
theater.
and so it mirrors like that you're part of this dome, you're part of his trial, you're watching it. There's a perfect mirror with the light in the dome. It looks just like a projector light coming from the back of your own theater. I don't know how obvious that was for people or not.
Yeah, but what is it? I don't really know if I
But
like
see,
this.
I don't like this choice, honestly. Like, I think it's really cool. Like, once I realized, oh yeah, you're making me part of this crowd. Like, that's a cool trick. But I don't really see the point in it. I don't know what it's trying to say with like, we're all judging Beau as guilty or not guilty. That's kind of what it does, is implicates the audience in his trial. But like, as an audience member, I'm here saying, I'm sympathetic to this guy. I want him to break free from his mom. I'm not the one judging him harshly for trying to break free of his mother's influence. Like, I'm just rooting for this guy to get out of here. I don't know why this film draws this parallel, and I think it's trying to be clever, and I don't think it really makes sense.
There's someone who kind of said, oh, this is actually, the audience judging Ari Aster, and I'm kind of like, either way, like, I just don't like the idea that a movie is like, what about you, the audience? What about you sitting there not helping this man who's drowning, judging? It's just like, I'm coming to see your movie, bro. Like,
and also, like, I'm not passively sitting there, though. I can understand what's going on.
But it's also, even if you were, like, it's weird to implicate the audience if that's what it's trying to do, and it just seems like it's trying to do
it would make sense in a certain movie where it's really asking you to wrestle with questions that might have to do with you and your position in society or whatever it is, or your moral position, your moral judgment on a certain issue. But here, like, the film's very clear. I don't think there's gray morality going on as to whether Beau should feel guilty or should not feel guilty. Like, this man should not feel guilty. This poor fucking man. We feel bad for him. We want him to escape.
Yeah, so that's the movie. What did you think of the movie? Do you understand the movie in any different way? Do you have anything to add to this analysis that you'd like to do in the comments? Please do it. Contribute. We did kind of end up saying the same thing in different ways, but that's kind of because we're talking about a movie that's sort of doing that.
Yeah.
I still do love the movie, and I like that it allowed me to dive that deep. And I do think that there are certain pieces of it that do paint a more interesting portrait and aren't just kind of saying the same thing, that they are adding something to the story. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Did you feel guilty when you saw that final shot?